Hare Krishna, Namaste, Chapter 3, which is entitled as Karma Yoga, Sloka 6. Karmendriyāṇi saṁyamya āste manasā smaran indriyārthān vimūḍhātmā mithyācāraḥ ucyate. So in the sloka, Krishna says, for one who restrains the senses of action, but his mind dwells on those sense objects, are certainly considered to be pretender. He who controls the action senses, but remembering those objects of senses in his mind, is called a cheater. And that is what been explained in this particular sloka. Because of remembering the sense objects in the mind, in spite of not extending the sense outward, but internally is constantly thinking about those enjoyable objects. That is just because of the impurity of the mind. The mind is not purified yet. The reason the mind is not purified is because this person has failed to perform nishkama karma yoga, but directly trying to or attempting to control his attraction from the material object is not going to work, and such person are simply called as mithyācāraḥ, means pretender. One has to go through this process that Krishna has recommended rather directly taking up the jnana yoga. If one tries to take up the jnana yoga directly by not going through the step-by-step process through karma yoga, then this person's mind and senses are out of sync. Therefore, he will lead a life of duplicity. So Arjuna, hearing, he was thinking, why Krishna, you're telling me like that? I'm a qualified candidate. I can renounce anything, anytime. So Krishna's response was, well, your desire is to become self-realized, but your actions will all be towards sense enjoyment. For one to get control of the senses, one has to do nishkama karma yoga. But since you fail to do what's been recommended, to do your duty, therefore your senses will not be under control, while mind is thinking it is still fit to do jnana yoga. Whereas the indriyas are wandering everywhere. So if there is no synchronization between the indriyas, the senses, and mind, and that person act differently, who's called as pretender, mithyācāraḥ. The five working senses, namely the hands, legs, so forth, one tries to control, but the person who's trying to control is called vimūḍhātmā, a foolish person, because he's trying to control which cannot be controlled like this so easily, because his mind is wandering, thinking about, unable to see things, enjoy the beautiful things, the tongue unable to taste palatable food. So even though he's trying to control his external senses, the mind is wandering towards those sense objects. So externally he is a renounced person, but internally is a very attached person to the senses, and that person is called as mithyācāraḥ, or a pretender, imposter, a cheater. Now, he failed. The reason is because he failed to take up the karma yoga process, and simply taking up jnana yoga by closing his eyes, ears, nose, etc. will not make one to become a qualified person for renunciation. Just by closing eyes, ears, nose is not that he is now a very renounced person. Or just because he has a problem in his life, a fight with his spouse, business loss, etc. If one takes up a sannyas, a renounced order, that is also not good, because if the problems are gone, he'll be back again into business. So the mind and the action should be working in sync. If they both do not work together, the result is not going to be favorable. One's ears might be hearing this audio recording, but the mind might be thinking something else. In this way, one will not get the full benefit of what one needs to achieve by hearing. The danger of this idea of bypassing what has been told, at the end, he will not get the result. Rather, you would have simply wasted his time. Therefore, it is to be understood that as long as the mind and the senses are all not working cooperatively, there is a disconnect between these two. The senses are in its own way, whereas mind is thinking it's doing dhyana, is not going to give a good result. Rather, this person, externally renounced person, but internally is very attached person to the sense object, and that person is called as mithyācāraḥ. Karmendriyāṇi saṁyamya āste manasā smaran indriyārthān vimūḍhātmā mithyācāraḥ ucyate. Namaste. Hare Krishna.